Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday, September 16th edition of StudentLoanJustice.org. I am Alan Collins, founder of Student Loan Justice. We are the oldest, largest, and pretty much only legitimate citizens group actually fighting for student loan justice. So we've been around for 15 years now. We've been featured top story on 60 Minutes. We've written articles, books. We've broken some of the most important research in higher education in the past 15 years. Rolling Stone, Fox News, Vice News, on and on and on. So welcome. We're glad that you found us. If you're new to the group, welcome all the more. If you're a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, a Green, welcome. You are definitely welcome here. If you have student loans and you feel the student loan injustice that is a cancer on this country, then welcome. We're glad that you found us. For the first 15 years of our existence, we were fighting very moderately only for the return of bankruptcy protections to student loans. This lies at the core of this problem. However, it's too late, guys. We gave Congress and the president 15 years, and they failed us. They allowed us to be devoured by this unconstitutionally predatory, viciously hyperinflationary, did I say unconstitutional? Yes, I did. Lending system. And now it's too late. This is now a failed lending system. If you forget everything I say in the next 20 minutes, remember that. This lending system is toast. It's finished. Put a fork in it. The only meaningful thing that really can be done at this point is canceling the loans. It's too late to return bankruptcy protections to these loans. All that's going to do is ensure that 10, 15 million, maybe 20 million, maybe even more million people will be thrown into bankruptcy court. We are a better country than that. So we started a petition on change.org, and you can see the link to it down here or over there somewhere. Change.org, cancel student loans, capital C, capital S, capital L. And I'm very glad to report we now have 585,000 signatures. So that is a very good start. But folks, I am here to tell you, we could and should have 44 million signatures on that petition. Now the key, most interesting thing, most important thing about our petition that is different from all other loan cancellation proposals out there is that none of the other loan cancellation proposals will actually work. I'm being very serious about that. Every other loan cancellation proposal, whether it's from Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or any of the members of Congress who have put forth legislation towards that end, all of those proposals require Congress to pass a law raising a huge amount of tax money, like $1 trillion, $2.2 trillion in the case of Bernie Sanders, and using that money to pay for loan cancellation. Well, that entire architecture is completely doomed to fail. Here's why. First of all, Congress is just not going to do that. Congress is not going to raise taxes, not now during the pandemic and not in the foreseeable future. Certainly not for the purpose of canceling student loans. We've been working with Congress for many, many, many years. We've had many pieces of legislation authored on our behalf, and Congress is just not going to do that. But even if they did do that, the Department of Education has no desire, no intentions of canceling any student loans. Look at the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. 99.2% of the people who thought they were getting their loans canceled through that program last year found out the hard way that they had been disqualified out of the program for one reason or another. This is how the Department of Education rolls. They act completely against the interests of the citizens, and that's just a fact, folks. Sorry to say that. I'm sure every other federal agency does a does a bang-up job serving the public. Department of Education does not. The Office of Federal Student Aid has become a captured, I would say corrupted agency. So any loan cancellation legislation that may be given to the Department of Education to execute, they will bureaucratize it to death. We've seen this happen over the past 15 or even 20 years. That's what they do. But folks, think about it this way, okay? The taxpayers really shouldn't need to pay to cancel these loans. Hear me out. The federal government already funded 85% of all student loans. Already paid. They should not have to pay twice. So Congress is useless. That's where we come in. Who is not useless is the president. Now, whether it's President Trump or the next president, the office of the president and the Secretary of Education have all the executive authority that they need to cancel all federally owned student loans. As I said, that's 85% of all student loan debt by executive order. And not one penny has to change hands. Not one penny has to be transacted. The taxpayers already paid for these loans. They don't need to pay twice. The president could order the secretary to cancel the loans, and it would be done. Our strong belief also is that the president should do this in concert with the Internal Revenue Service so that the canceled amounts are not taxed. And that's quite important as well. But yeah, folks, executive order. That is how these loans are going to get canceled. The beautiful thing about our proposal is that the president can not only cancel these loans without having to need to raise one dime of tax, without having to get any congressional approval, the president can do this without adding one penny to the national debt. So here we are in this pandemic. Okay, we've already thrown out, $5 trillion, according to some people, up to $9 trillion in fiscal stimulus, whether it's the Federal Reserve buying bonds and buying stuff from banks, or whether it's in direct stimulus to small businesses and stimulus checks and unemployment benefits and $1.6 million stimulus for 43,000 millionaires and billionaires. The point is, we've thrown out trillions and trillions in stimulus so far in the past 5 months. All of that stuff added to the national debt. These student loans can be canceled by executive order without adding anything to the national debt. It is by far and away the easiest way to stimulate the economy. So folks, we are where it's at. This proposal that this group is pushing, and we are the only group in the country so far that has embraced this concept wholly. This is where it's at. Others will come, but we are the tip of the spear. We are the pioneers. We are the pilgrims. You heard it here first. Now, because we are the pilgrims, I know we've got 600,000 people behind us now at this point, and that's a great muscle to flex. But we still are the pioneers. We've got to work a little harder. We've got to punch a little above our weight to make this happen. This is what we've been pushing for the past 4 months, folks. And I'm very glad to report that just in the past 3 weeks, we've been featured on I think 8 pieces of media in local, national media. Just in the past week, we've been featured on local news stories in Wisconsin and Ohio and Baltimore and Mississippi. And there's much more to come. We've been doing interviews on a daily basis. I expect something coming out in Texas very soon. Expect something in Iowa very soon. Expect a really good national piece to be coming out quite soon. But, none of this stuff would have happened if we, meaning you and me, meaning everybody on this group, hadn't been contacting news organizations and telling them to report on this petition. The media can and should, and up to this point, is our friend. So We can answer all the tough questions. I know there's a lot of knee-jerk people out there that are like, hey, you should really pay your loans. Why should the taxpayers pay for your loans? We can answer all of those questions, folks. We've been sharpening this blade for many years. And we can answer all of the tough questions. But what really works is not when I call 60 Minutes and say, hey, you should really interview me. And they go, oh, okay, we'll just go ahead and interview you. It doesn't work that way. What works best is when a third party, a third party contacts them and says, hey, you should really, you should really report on this petition. They've got 600,000 signatures. This is a very unique and interesting and novel, I guess, approach to loan cancellation. It makes perfect sense, and it deserves to be in the national conversation. When you do that, there's a far greater chance that will work. So, for example, last week we asked everybody to send a thing to I think 70 different news organizations across the country. And since then, we've done 8 interviews or something. So it really is working, guys. We're really kicking ass right now. And we have to double down because this should be a presidential election issue. And it is. But this should rise to the very top. And this is maybe the most important thing that I'll say tonight, guys. The numbers that we represent are so absolutely gargantuan. This is the biggest voter bonanza in modern presidential election history. Truly. This is the largest, I'm going to repeat it, largest voter bonanza up for grabs in certainly the recent modern history of presidential election politics, certainly in my lifetime. There are 55 million people in the country who have student loans or are co-signed on them. 80% of those 55 million people were never going to be able to repay their loans. And that was true before the pandemic hit. So 80% were either unable to pay on their student loans, they were delinquent, they were in default, they're in forbearance, otherwise not able to pay. Or, and that's 63% of those 55 million people, or they were making payments, but their balances were going up, not down. And that's closer to maybe 20% of those 55 million people. So, folks, that is 44 million people is enough to nearly elect a president outright. 44 million people is more people than all of the standing armies in the world combined. 44 million people is a seventh of the entire population of the country. 44 million people is more than the entire state of California. If 44 million people were their own country, I think we'd be the 23rd biggest country on Earth or something like that. Check that. You might want to Google that, but I'm pretty sure that's pretty close to the truth. So think about all the other presidential election issues in the ether. Immigration, healthcare, gun control, environment. All of those issues are very well defined. The battle lines have been clearly drawn. People know pretty much where they fall. It's pretty hard to pull more than 1 million or 2 voters from one side or the other of that issue. So, it's not a whole lot there. The student loan issue is the wild freaking West. Neither Congress nor the president have managed to get their arms around this issue. The partisan boundaries have not been drawn. This is up for grabs. And the presidential candidates who actually speaks to those 44 million distressed student loan borrowers, 55 million in total, 44 million are freaking out about their student loans, and all those people vote. They are going to win the presidential election. It's enough to turn the biggest landslide in history to a landslide loss. Biggest landslide win in history to a biggest landslide loss. You get my point. It is enough to completely flip the script on this election. Now, 4 years ago, Neither of the major parties gave anything for us, gave us anything to vote for. Hillary was MIA. Donald Trump was MIA. Nothing they were proposing was meaningful at all. This time, however, Joe Biden, to his credit, has at least put the return of bankruptcy protections into his presidential platform, and he has said he will cancel some student loans. Now, between you and me, his proposal just sucks. But, to most people who only pay 5 seconds worth of attention to these things, it at least sounds good. So Joe Biden just mouthing the words bankruptcy and loan cancellation, that's enough to put this issue in play with those 44 million voters. So the ice has been broken. And if we do this right, folks, and I'm saying you and me and everybody on this group, and no other people, us, that know how important this issue is, how many people we represent, if we do this right, in other words, if you and me and everybody on this group put some serious time growing this petition and getting the publicity that we need between now and the presidential election, it could be enough to put it in play so that in a perfect world, come election day, we see an October surprise where President Trump actually cancels these loans before the election. And then we win. Or maybe a little less than that, come January 20th, should Joe Biden win the election, he actually cancels the loan the day that he is sworn in. That is a realistic possibility, but the key is if we, you and me, try. Now, we're off to a great start. We've got 600,000 people on the petition right now today. We could get millions more, tens of millions more. And it all depends on how hard every person in this group on the petition, individually, as an individual, according to their own skills, talents, abilities, networks, whatever they can think of to do to grow the petition, how hard they try. Hey, Sarah McIntosh, how are you? By the way, if you have any questions or comments, I'm very happy to throw them out. I know the YouTube people who are watching this later won't have a chance, but come to our group on Facebook, Facebook/groups/SLJ group, and you can see us do live streams live like this nearly every night. So Sarah asks, do you think the government will ever pass a law for student loan forgiveness? I'm sad that my children will probably be paying their debt forever. Well, that's a great question, Sarah. And the answer is, when you say the government, there's two parts to the government. Well, three parts. There's the Supreme Court. No, they're never going to cancel student loans. Although, the Supreme Court may at some point decide and acknowledge the truth that these loans are indeed unconstitutional. But I'm not counting on that. Congress, unfortunately, Sarah, will never pass a meaningful law to forgive student loans. And by the way, we don't say forgive student loans, we say cancel student loans. We haven't done anything wrong to be forgiven for. If anything, the lending system, the Department of Education, and the members of Congress who voted in this predatory lending system, they should be begging us for forgiveness. But having said that, Sarah, yeah, every loan forgiveness program that Congress has passed up to this point has been a cruel joke, and the joke has been on the borrowers. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, 99.2% of the people who should have had their loans forgiven last year found out that they got disqualified for one reason or another. The Department of Education is administering this program so as to disqualify almost everyone. It is a tragedy. It's disgusting. It's obscene. So Congress really is feckless. They're useless. No matter how well-intentioned any piece of legislation they might pass may be, the Department of Education will see to it that the forgiveness programs will be bureaucratized to death. We have learned that the hard way over the past 15 years. However, the president does indeed have the power to cancel these loans outright by executive order. And I am here to tell you, Sarah, this is a failed lending system where 80% of everyone, that's 44 million people, were never going to be able to repay their loans even before the pandemic. Now that the pandemic is struck, almost nobody is paying on their loans right now. And if you think that many or maybe even any people are going to resume making their payments happily or unhappily when the payment suspension lifts, I think you're wrong. I think this entire lending system is vanishing into a mist of illegitimacy as we speak. And the president or the presidential candidate who acknowledges this and does the right thing and either cancels these student loans by executive order, and that won't require any tax money, won't require adding one penny to the national debt, they will reap a massive political benefit in this upcoming election. So I'm hopeful, Sarah. You know, the reality is a very stubborn thing. And the reality is that, yes, this is indeed a failed lending system. You can't kick this can down the road any further. So we've got that going for us. So take some heart. But it's also going to take some effort on our part, Sarah. You know, this could have a really bad outcome where the student loan swamp, if you want to call it that, in other words, the lending system, the unelected bureaucrats, the lawyers, the investors on Wall Street, all the people that are making money off of this lending system, if they have their way, this thing will go to its conclusion. And people will start getting sued en masse, and they'll get their real property liened. And, you know, federal marshals could even start showing up at people's homes and taking them off in arrest. It could have a really ugly, horrible dystopian outcome. We don't want that. We want the right outcome. Because remember, folks, we do not have to put up with this shit. Pardon my French. But the founding fathers were very concerned about exactly this kind of a predatory, tyrannical lending system coming around. That, you know, people like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, they themselves were being savaged under predatory debt to British banks and merchants. So they saw this problem coming from 250 years away. And that is why they called in the Constitution for uniform bankruptcy laws, for example. And they also called for equal protection under the law. So both of those things have been denied uniquely to student loan borrowers. So what I'm telling you, Sarah, is that the founding fathers are on our side. And we don't have to take this, and we shouldn't. Everybody out there watching this should realize that we are morally, constitutionally, ethically on the right. And the numbers are way on our side. You know, everybody who's making money off of this lending system, they all know that it is a failed lending system. Frankly, I think they're astonished that they've been able to perpetuate this indefensible lending system on the people for as long as they have. So they're ready to pull their ripcord and take their golden parachute and, you know, ride off into the sunset. But a lot, as I said, in fact, everything between now and November 3rd depends on how hard we all individually fight to get these loans gone. You think the president would cancel the debt? It would help the economy. Yeah, you know, right now is the perfect time for the president, whether this one or the next, to do exactly that. Now, I have it on very good word. In fact, I know firsthand that people at the highest levels of Joe Biden's presidential campaign are very well aware of our proposal, and they're considering it carefully. I also have it on very good word that I'm going to say the innermost circle of President Trump's administration are also well aware of our proposal, and they are considering it seriously. But, you know, politicians, they respond to pressure. And so the more that we, the people, can pressure them, meaning me and you and everybody individually, as I've said for the third time tonight, actually gets off the couch takes ownership of this problem, because these are your loans and your problem, and fights for it, commensurate with how important this problem is to you. I think for most people watching this, and the 600,000 people on our petition, and the 44 million people out there who are freaking out about their student loans, I think it's pretty important. So how hard we flex our muscle individually over the next 60, 75 days really will tell the tale. Sarah also says, I don't think people realize how bad it is until it affects them or their family. Yeah, if people that don't have student loans, they just don't understand. And that was the bane of our existence for so long. Everywhere we went, people that don't have student loans be like, hey, if you borrow money, shouldn't you pay it back? And that's exactly not the point. This is not a bad borrower lending problem. This is a bad lending system. Well, happily or unhappily, probably unhappily, the problem has grown so absolutely gargantuan at this point that we now have 44 million other people who are in exactly the same boat as us. And we need to find these people. You know these people. If you know 5 people who have student loans, 4 of them are freaking out. They will never be able to repay their loans. Whether they admit it to you publicly or not, they probably don't. That's just math. That's just the numbers. And by the way, that 80% figure that I've been saying, those aren't my numbers. Those come directly from the most recent director of the federal lending program, Wayne Johnson. So you can believe it. He said it. I'm only repeating it. As I said, during this pandemic, when we're pretty happy to throw many trillions of dollars at the economy, all of which adds to the national debt, why wouldn't we cancel all federal student loans? That's $1.5 trillion that would be unleashed on the economy, and it would cost the taxpayer zero in additional tax. Not going to add to the national debt, requires not one penny to be paid to anyone. It's debt, it's a jubilee. These loans have already been paid for. And by the way, that $1.5 trillion, most of that is monopoly money in the first place. It's interest, it's penalties and fees that were wrapped into new loans that people signed for. Very little of that $1.5 trillion is unpaid principal. So this is the lowest hanging fruit on the fiscal stimulus tree, folks. This is the biggest, by far, the biggest stimulative bang for the buck that you can possibly get. Frankly, I am astonished that that this wasn't among the first things that they did when this pandemic hit. Because believe me, folks, if you forget everything I've said tonight, remember this. These loans are going away. They are vanishing into a mist of illegitimacy as we speak. Now, whether this has the good outcome that we are fighting for and that you had better fight for, or the terrible outcome, which is like some kind of a police state where we get, conquered and enslaved and become a sort of slave nation, that depends entirely on how hard we fight. So, folks, I'm asking you all, as I wrap up this live stream here tonight, to check back often. In fact, check back on a daily basis. We have things that we have very easy things that we are asking everyone to do every single day. Yesterday, we blitzed Joe Biden. We all wrote to the White House, to Joe Biden's campaign. And we told him to pledge to cancel all federally owned student loans and return bankruptcy protections to all the loans that he cannot cancel as president by executive order. The day before that, we did the same thing with President Trump. The day before that, I think we did a Twitter blast on Twitter-wide, and the day before that, we had everybody contact news organizations. So these are very easy things. We make it as easy as possible for everyone to do. So if you're signed up on our petition, make sure that you submit your email address when or maybe sign again. But make sure that you get our daily updates on our petition. Check back here on this live stream on a daily basis. Just keep at it. The amount, the 15 minutes per day that you spend doing very simple things to grow our petition between now and November 3rd, it is worth 1,000,000 times more than that in the grand scheme of things. So come on, guys. If ever you were going to spend some of your time and effort and energy into fighting to get these loans gone so that you and me and 55 million other people, and more importantly, the tens or hundreds of millions of people that are going to follow in our footsteps, so that we can all get on with our lives as the Founding Fathers intended. If ever you were going to spend some time, the next month and a half would be when you actually put your back and your muscle into this fight. So we need you, you need us, the 44 million other freaking out student loan borrowers in the country who you know and you need to find. They need us and we need them. So let's do this, guys. I have never been more jacked in the 15 years that we've been doing this as I am right now. And I would love to get this problem solved in the next month. So come on, dudes. Let's strap it on. Let's hang together, at least for the next 6 weeks, and win this battle together. Let's not all hang separately, because believe me, if you sit there and do nothing and you wait and you watch and you worry and you expect that somebody else is going to pull your weight for you, we will surely all hang separately. So let's not do that. Let's do the first thing. Let's have some fun. And let's get these loans gone by Election Day. Good luck. Godspeed. Check back on a daily basis here, right here. And God bless.